Hello again. It's been a while. Say hello to Shinigami. This is Shinigami. He's you good. Mwah. All right. I'm a little behind on the Twin Peaks season 3. Catching up now. I did start at rewatching episode 8, the big sort of Bob reveal and Laura reveal and the got it right and all that other good stuff. It was a good place to jump back in. But it did remind me there was a whole thing, and it took me a while to start, a lot of thinking about it and kind of figuring it out and everything. Um, but the repeated references to creamed corn, hmm, as disgusting as that is, sort of intrigued me. I'm like, well, I'm more familiar with David Lynchy and David Lynchy stuff now than I was when I first started kind of pondering this. Um, but I think I was familiar enough with Twin Peaks and some other things at the time. And I knew it's not just here to be weird. He doesn't do really anything there to be weird. And what I eventually came to was the idea of creamed corn being sort of twisted. It was a thing that should not be. You have, the corn, which is this natural phenomenon, can be used in a variety of ways as foodstuffs, and ways to help us survive and be healthy, and a staple food sort of thing, but essentially a natural thing. Even if you take out the sort of idea of you know over millennia we've sort of cross-pollinated and ostensibly genetically engineered it to be something more, even before we started just flat out injecting stuff or whatever we do to genetically engineer things. It was cultivated, it was enculturated, it was created to be the staple, but it was essentially a natural thing. Now, cream corn is not natural. Cream corn is manufactured. Cream corn is not something that should really rightfully exist because it's taking that sort of natural thing, it's processing it down into something kind of gross, um, and sort of basically perverting it. And I think that's kind of what he was going on, is like there's these things in this world that is supposed to be natural, but has become changed and perverted through different reasons and through different means. So I think one of the things that they really showed, and this is where my connection went with episode 8 for the season 3 of Twin Peaks, when they show the White Sands denuclear test and how important that whole thing was to that episode. And the fact that with Gordon's office, you see the nuclear pictures and explosions and things like that, and then you see that sort of wormy humanoid thing, which could be either the thing or related to the thing from the first episode that was in the weird sort of Faraday box in New York, that slaughtered those two people, sort of expectorating out of its mouth all this stuff, this sort of liquidy, almost semen-like stuff with bits floating around in it. And then out of those bits and everything came that orb, and you see Bob's face. So we know from, at least from Hawk, that the Black Lodge and the White Lodge, these things are so millennia old as maybe even time. So these things, the light and the dark, all these things have existed before and will continue to exist. They hold a balance to nature. It's just the way the universe is, and the idea of if you're thinking about it in almost a duality sort of sense, a yin and yang, that sort of idea. But there comes along within those two sort of poles things that can be manipulated or polluted or perverted. And that's, I think, what Bob was. And the idea of, you have this sort of natural darkness that happens. You have, now the human mind and the human spirit, which by all these different uh, sort of spiritual sources, say has a great deal of power, unbeknownst to ourselves, to sort of create the world. We even talk about quantum physics and the idea of, the observation of these quantum things now determines that thing. If we take it at a higher sort of energetic or even spiritual level, you've got the idea that, we can create these other things and worlds and dimensions or so, or something like that, in a sort of astral travel sort of thing. So now you have human beings in the midst of all this conflict and war and all this other stuff do something, or human beings do something. Yeah, I think so. That unleashes an immense amount of power, just an immense amount of power, a sickening amount of power. And through that intention, and through that unleashing of that amount of energy, it has taken something that might have been there anyway, that sort of human sort of destruction and fear and greed and all the things that Bob is supposed to feed on. And those are natural sort of spirits or anything anyway. And this amount of energy has now created into this world a perverted version of even that darkness, ostensibly making Bob evil cream corn, which might actually be a redundant statement now that I hear myself say it. So that's my kind of take on where that went. The whole point, and it might have been tried to have been explained more had the original run gone longer, more than just, a couple references to cream corn and the little magician kid who looked like David Lynch and all that other stuff. But I think when I watched it the first time, this episode 8 with the sort of birth of Bob, I thought about that idea of what I kind of took about what cream corn was, is that thing that shouldn't be, this perversion of nature, that we've put energy and time and intent into creating this thing that is other. And I think that is something that has happened with Bob, only it was less intentional than cream corn. But with the nuclear blast, it just unleashed so much power, so much energy, I should say more precisely, so much energy, especially with the intent to try and kill people with it, that it, again, it took that sort of energy that was already there, that sort of negative being conscious energy that was already there, Black Lodge, and everything else, and twisted it into something other. And I think that's one of the reasons, and I haven't seen the end yet, so don't judge this. This is coming out after the show's already done. I haven't seen the end yet, so don't judge this or anything like that. But I think that's where some of it is, and some of the conflict that the Black Lodge is having with Kuppelganger running around and not coming back when he was supposed to. I got the impression that Kuppelganger was supposed to go back to the Black Lodge after his 25 years were up or whatever, and then, resume living in there because he had Bob, and that was supposed to all stay and come back. And he's refusing to do that. That's why he was having some of his meltdown. And you see Mike coming in and doing stuff and trying to help proper Cooper Dougie do his thing, and all of that is to bring that back together, and have the balance restruck. And because Bob is not sort of originally part of that balance, he's sort of a polluted other thing. He probably doesn't care as much about that proper balance between the light and the dark and everything else as a being would, even if it was originally from the Black Lodge. It would still have this sort of a natural tendency towards that balance. It would have its time to wax, and then eventually have its time to wane. And I think something natural would understand that more. But since Bob isn't natural, he's a product of that sort of ego and that intent that I'm going to force this world to do and be what I want it to be, and therefore is had more of an imprint on human intention, on him and his creation, then maybe these sort of balancing forces are used to. Maybe these balancing forces, even from the Black Lodge or the White Lodge, are used to having some sort of effect on people. Demons whispering in your ear, or, spirit guides, helping you do whatever, and sort of having an influence on people. It would have seemed that people almost have an influence on Bob. That was more part of his creation. So his giving a flying crap about the balance of things really isn't there, because that human intention has sort of warped or polluted that out of him, even in his creation. So that's it. That's all I got on that at the moment. I thought there were a couple interesting other references to things that I might talk about a little bit shortly as well. But I just wanted to kind of get that out. That was my whole thing about cream corn from a long time ago, and now rewatching that, I was reminded about it with Bob. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing whether or not some of my sort of theories or anything else will come out. I actually wrote, this is a few years ago, I wrote a long sort of letter, and I actually sent it to David Lynch because I don't know why. It was silly. But the idea of where I thought some things could keep going should they ever have brought Twin Peaks back. I even wrote a sort of companion to the Fire Walk with Me, Black Lodge poem, and speculated to the entrance of the White Lodge being behind the waterfall by the Great Northern. So even though they show the sort of what looked like the White Lodge sort of fortress on that lonely rock in the ocean, but surrounded by water, fire, water, that weird ringing that Ben Horn and Ashley Judd's character were hearing in Ben's office sort of went, oh, 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 was that right? Was that right? So I'm going to find out with that. I have some speculations on Diane now, too. I don't think I've had too many things ruined for me yet, but I am looking forward to seeing if just some of my speculation is there. So that's all I have for right now. Shinny is being very demanding, and so is my belly. I've got to eat dinner. And he does too, actually pretty soon. Soon? Soon. Okay. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for lasting all this time, if you did. If not, so like, subscribe, share, all that usual good stuff, and we will talk at you later.